We had this like convoluted, messed up financial system, and I thought that this was an interesting path forward to creating a more fair, open system that was like at full equilibrium, where it was fair for everybody to participate in. And I thought that that was just like, as a guiding light, was the right way to go. I didn't know that it was all going to turn into like what it has today. I aligned with that vision a lot, and like it all worked out in the end.
That's, I think, what got us all into Bitcoin and crypto, is just the idea that blockchain provides transparency, truth. We can all work together as opposed to other people trying to not work together in the traditional financial systems. Love what you had to say about getting into the space. Obviously, now you've become one of the top people at one of the top coins and one of the top networks in the entire game. So I would love to talk about Solana a little bit. All right. Welcome back to another episode of Advantage Blockchain's User Extractable Value. We're here with a very special guest, a former Penn State grad just like myself, who is also in crypto. Really excited to have on Ben Sparango, who is the head of strategic business development at the Solana Foundation. Welcome, Ben. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yeah. So I think where we wanted to start is really on your background, how you got into crypto, some of the things that you've done in the space, and then how you got to Solana.
That's
For
a big role. You're kind of a big deal around here, Ben.
Yeah, well, I mean, where it all started was actually, Beckman, I don't know if you were in that group. You might have been in that group, but the old e-money group was where
Of
this
course, he was
all
in there.
began. Yeah, back in 2017 during the first bull market that I think we all experienced, that was where it all started. And I mean, Mark, I think we talked about this back in the day, but it was like you could clearly see like the people who were interested in this stuff for the long haul and the people who were just in it for like gambling purposes.
Yep.
And it's clear because the three of us are still here like 8 years later talking about it. So yeah, it all started in that group back in the last bull market, and then like, you know, the bull market ended, and there were certain people who just like, you know, were like, I got to do this full time. And I was living in Philly at the time, and I was working at a small startup there that was not a crypto startup, and I quit my job, and I was like, I just got to find my way into this industry. So I got a contracting gig with Consensus, and I worked with Gitcoin while I was there. Gitcoin was a spoke, or basically like a portfolio company of Consensus at the time. And you know, I was just doing anything I could. I was, you know, a social media manager and like helping write blog posts, like anything that I could do to get into the industry. And I was at the same time, I was working at Messari totally on like a pro bono basis. Like we had a program back then called the Messari Analyst Program, where it was basically just a way that like they would bring a bunch of people into the ecosystem who were interested in crypto, but like didn't have, you know, there was no resume for getting into crypto, and, you know, it was very hard to like kind of break in. And so the analyst program was a way that you could come and like do research for Messari on a free basis. And then use that as like your resume to help like launch you into the ecosystem. And so I did that for a little bit. I got another small gig with Republic up in New York, where I was doing research for them. They had a platform where people were launching basically ICOs through their platform in a more regulated manner. And I had to do a lot of research around those projects to make sure that we weren't launching any like scam companies through the platform. The whole goal in the long term was getting to the investment side, though. So in late 2018, I joined Multicoin Capital, and I moved to Austin, Texas. I was down there for a couple years, worked on the investment team there. In the super early days, this was bear market 2018, 2019. It was a multi-strat hedge fund, still is today. We had a liquid fund as well as a venture fund. So it was a split job between analyzing the public markets and like positioning on a week-to-week basis, and then also doing venture investments at the seed and Series A stage. And then after I left Multicoin in early 2020 or mid 2020, I joined Solana Labs, which then eventually led to Solana Foundation, where I've been for the last 4.5 years. So I joined as head of strategy over there, and have been working hard to try and make sure that the Solana ecosystem can grow, and we're onboarding more developers and more companies into the Solana ecosystem, and that's where I've been for the last few years.
Yeah, right on. That is an impressive resume, for sure. I want to we'll dig into a lot of these different roles that you've had, and of course, ultimately into Solana. I want to go back to square one just to understand like your mindset. I think it's important that the audience understands like how do people think about these things, where does their origin stories actually come from. So I know you talked about eMoney, which is an OG group chat back in like 2016. I created actually and on like GroupMe. And was that the first exposure that you had to crypto, or that was the first kind of people, time that you were put in a group where other people were also interested in it, or kind of what?
Yeah, that was the first time I was put in a group where other people were interested in it.
Right.
The first time I got exposed to crypto was actually in 2016. I went out to the SALT conference with my dad, which was in Las Vegas. And the SALT conference, for anyone that doesn't know, is Skybridge is a hedge fund that puts on this conference every year. It used to be in Vegas, now it's in New York. And my dad brought me out. I was a junior in college, and he brought me out because he was going to this. And like, I didn't know anything about finance. I was an engineer major. Like, I just kind of was tagging along for this trip to Vegas with my dad. And I was just kind of walking around, checking out the talks there. And a lot of them are like, hardcore TradFi finance talks. And then like I stumbled into a side room where the Winklevoss twins were talking about Bitcoin and blockchain.
Yeah.
This was May 2016. And the only reason I went there is because I know the Winklevoss twins from the Facebook story. And so I went in there and they were talking about it. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And I swear to you, there was no more than like 25 people in this like room. It was one of those side stages at a conference that like they tuck away the talks that nobody wants to like go to. And so like they just walked off the stage afterwards. And I had a few questions about what they were talking about. And they were like more than happy to have a conversation with me for a little bit and like explain to me just like the basics of like Bitcoin and blockchain. And that was the first time that I ever like learned about it. And so shortly after that, like 2017 rolled around, Ethereum was getting a lot of action and ICOs were going crazy. And that was around the time that I got added to the eMoney group. And that was where it all took off from there.
And so what gave you the conviction, like early stage when everyone is shitting on us, everyone thinks crypto's crazy, you guys are crazy, this stuff is for who knows who's using it on the dark web and whatnot. Like what gave you the conviction that basically all these people are wrong and that, we were correct about our mindset about this technology?
Yeah, I think the thing that really clicked for me was the concept of Nash equilibrium, that you can like kind of create these mechanism design systems where any deviation from the rules of the system only results in a loss. And like we all grew up like we were kind of coming of age teenagers when the great financial crisis happened, and it was just like an absolute clusterfuck of like misaligned incentives. And so like the thing that really like caught my eye with Bitcoin was like they've created this system where you can't cheat it. Everything that you do to try and cheat it, you lose. The only way to like make money is by playing along with the rules, properly validating blocks. Otherwise, you're just wasting your resources and spending money and not getting any reward. And so I thought that was really interesting because like we had this like convoluted, messed up financial system, and I thought that this was an interesting path forward to creating a more fair, open, and yeah, system that was like at full equilibrium where it was fair for everybody to participate in. And I thought that was just like as a guiding light was the right way to go. I didn't know that it was all going to turn into like what it has today, but it was. I aligned with that vision a lot, and like it all worked out in the end.
That's incredible. That I love that about the Nash equilibrium. And I that's I think what got us all into Bitcoin and crypto is just the idea that blockchain provides transparency, truth, and we can all work together as opposed to other people trying to not work together. In the traditional financial systems. So, love what you had to say about getting into the space. Obviously, now you've become, one of the top people at one of the top coins and one of the top networks in the entire game. So, I would love to talk about Solana a little bit, and I would love to understand how you would describe Solana to someone that doesn't, is really unfamiliar with it.
Yeah, for sure. So give a little bit of like history on blockchains. It all really started with Bitcoin and the idea that you could have like self-sovereign money and a system where it's all computer-based, where nobody can confiscate that money from you, which is totally devoid from the existing financial system. And then it graduated to Ethereum, where you could build applications, money value transfer applications. And so that was like our whole coming of age within crypto, where you had Bitcoin and the graduation to Ethereum, and you can build all these apps on top of it. And then the apps started getting adoption, and you realized that the way that these blockchains were architected had inherent problems where if there's a certain amount of users coming on chain, the demand spikes and therefore the fees have to spike. And so Solana takes a different approach to architecting a blockchain whereby it attempts to introduce parallelization to the system so that you can process multiple transactions in parallel, such that you can transmit more data faster than, like, say, the Ethereum blockchain could. The Ethereum blockchain processes transactions in series. So like this one came before this one, came before this one, and there's no way around that. The more hardware that you throw at that system, it doesn't go any faster. They still need to be processed in the same way. So Solana is a little bit different. The more cores, the more computing power that you throw at the system, the faster it'll go, the more efficient it will be, and the cheaper that it will be. And so I thought that was a really novel approach to building a blockchain. And so the time came for me to leave Multicoin, and I got exposed to this. And frankly, at the time, I was a little jaded by all of the scaling solutions that had come and gone with Ethereum while I had been at Multicoin. You know, we talked about state channels and plasma and all of these things that ended up like, they were great ideas, but no one could ever put them into practice. Sharding. And then I found the Anatoly and Raj. I had a few conversations with them. It seemed like a really interesting approach to scaling blockchains. And, fortunately we were right. Do I think that Solana is the end state of high performance blockchains? I'm not sure. But I think that it was the next step and the next graduation away from building smart contract platforms.
That's great. And I would love to understand about your specific work at Solana and what you're working on. Obviously, you are you're really leading the strategic business development there. So, would love to learn kind of where you're at and how you work with the rest of the team.
Sure. So my role has evolved a ton over time. When I originally joined, we had a super small team, and it was this huge influx of people building all different types of applications, NFT apps or games or DeFi apps. And it was very hard to kind of like sift through those and figure out where the signal from the noise was. And that was just the way that it needed to be in the early days back in like 2020, 2021, 2022. Now, as the ecosystem has grown and we've scaled out the team a little bit more, it's a lot easier for us to specialize. And so I interplay with all the different types of applications, but I primarily focus on financial applications. So I work really closely with the DeFi teams. I work closely with institutional tokenization partners, TradFi people who are coming into crypto who want to build some sort of application like a Visa, PayPal, or a large institutional firm. And then I work on the payment side of things as well. So anything that's like finance related is typically where I touch now. And the goal of the Solana Foundation is just to make it easier for people to build on top of Solana and build successful businesses on top of Solana. So our mandate is just to grow the amount of people who are building on top of the network. And we do that by events that we host around the world. We work closely with them to like connect them to other people into the ecosystem, infrastructure partners. We have a grants program. We have a full suite of things that we can do to support anyone who's building within the ecosystem, and really try and figure out where is the best place for us to allocate our resources to make sure that it has the most expected output for the ecosystem, whether that's infrastructure improvement or new people coming on chain or whatever it might be. And so that's the broad goal of the foundation.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I kind of want to ask you a follow-up about that. Like, what are some of the more like interesting use cases that you've been working on? And what is Solana up to, and like where will Solana really be bringing people and the critical masses into blockchain?
Yeah, would love to
Yes,
dive into the ecosystem.
for sure. The stuff that I've been working on most recently has been like payments related stuff. I think that blockchains have created this system whereby you have this autonomous system, autonomous clearinghouse, where you basically have recreated the payment rails of TradFi without any of the centralized parties. And that's a huge unlock for global payments. Not only from like a limiting fees perspective and limiting intermediaries perspective, but from like a settlement time perspective and ease of use. And so there's been a ton happening in the payment space. Earlier this year, Visa launched a pilot of their payments application on top of Solana. That was then followed up by PayPal launching their PYUSD stablecoin on top of Solana. And so while these are like V1 pilots of payments applications on Solana, I think that this is really showing where the minds of these entities are and where the direction of like payments is going on chain. They see this as a fundamentally easier, less costly system for them to facilitate global payments. And we're just at the early stages of this because it was really hard to do this prior to something like a Solana coming onto the scene, because it's really hard to do payments on Ethereum where you have variable fees. And so we have been working really closely with these people, as well as grassroots payments products like Sphere or Sling. Sling, one of these, is basically like a Venmo that uses USDC on the back end, but from the user perspective, it's totally abstracted and it looks like you're just using Venmo and sending dollars from point A to point B. And so I'm really excited about this, where the payment space is going on top of Solana. There's a lot to do to make it a lot easier for the average Joe person to interact with this stuff, like integrations with point of sale systems or integrations with like a Apple Pay type experience. But that's where I've been spending a lot of my time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, so payments seems to be a big focus of what you guys are doing. I guess outside of what you're working on and sort of what's in your purview, are there things that beyond payments that you guys are focused on immediately, or and would love to hear about what those are.
Yeah, so we're kind of at a stage now where the ecosystem dictates the directions. It's not so much like a central planning org where like the Solana Foundation dictates like what we're interested in next. It's more like emergent, and then we're like, oh, how can we support that? So like you kind of have seen that with like the AI agents, like Truth Terminal stuff recently, where people are talking about like autonomous AI agents with like their own bank account, just that being a crypto wallet. And then you obviously have like the meme coin craze that has been going on right now. And so like while I can't say that these are like focuses of ours, they are trends that we are monitoring and seeing where we can support as needed. I think that the AI x crypto sector is one that's super interesting, and we have not even scratched the surface of what we could possibly do with this stuff. And so what we're doing right now is basically trying to put together a framework for the ecosystem to know how we want to support these things. So like initially we want to support tooling to make it easier for people to experiment with this stuff. Then we're actually running an AI hackathon in the next coming weeks, where people can come and build some sort of like agentic finance application and apply for funding from the foundation. And so we kind of serve as this like conduit for people to like bring these crazy ideas to market and really just like launch them into the crypto ecosystem and see where they go. Because it's kind of like going back to like 2007 and being like, oh, the internet, and we have like social media, like what do you think is going to actually happen from this? Like how are people going to create like businesses around this stuff? I have no idea. But the only way that we're going to get there is if we can seed more innovation and more people building these types of applications in the short term.
Well, you guys have been very successful at that because the Electric Capital report just came out. And I believe that Solana was the fastest growing network with the most new developers in the ecosystem. So whatever you're doing is definitely working.
Yeah, it's like it's a multifaceted approach that we take to building an ecosystem, and obviously it gets pared down over time because our impact is less important over time. But the thing that we did from the really early days was like build a sense of community with the early people who came on, and have that community build the next group of developers. So basically what that means in practice is like we ran these hackathons way back in the day where we had nobody building on top of Solana. There was like 2 teams that were building full time on top of Solana, and we would run these hackathons where we would get people in, get them to build an application in like 2 to 4 weeks. And then we would effectively do like interviews with them. We would be like, what was really great about the developer experience? What totally sucked? Like, what else would you need? How much capital would you need to do this full time? And we would figure out how to build support systems around these people so that they could build successful businesses or successful companies on top of Solana. And then as we grew and we started doing more of these hackathons, or we did the in-person hacker houses, it built this community where they could all lean on each other. Like, because a guy who participated in a hackathon 6 months ago has a lot more experience than a guy who just came in and participated in the last hackathon and be like, oh, here's how you do X, Y, and Z, or here's a tutorial on how to do that. And so we've been really good over time in making sure that the support systems exist throughout the ecosystem, so that, there's, if it's just one entity pulling every new developer into the ecosystem, it's impossible. You're not going to get anywhere. You need to build these separate entities that are going to pull other people into the ecosystem and help them along the way. And so that's really been the key over the last 4 years, is to build a strong community that's all aligned on where the rest of the ecosystem is going, and have them be the advocates for the ecosystem.
And how easy is it for, developers to actually get in contact with the foundation? Like, do you guys, I mean, I'm sure you guys provide grants of some sorts, but, say that there's some young developers or even experienced ETH developers, or, even Bitcoin developers, just people who are engineering in the blockchain space, but they have no contacts at, the Solana Foundation. How would you recommend they get way more involved, and why should they come build on Solana rather than the competition?
Yeah, so the easiest ways to get involved are the in-person events or the hackathons, because it's kind of like a no-loss way to get into the ecosystem. The hackathons in particular, if you want to dedicate a few weeks of your life to building an MVP on top of Solana and toying around with the tooling, it's there for you, and it's basically like a call option. You could win a prize and then basically get seed funding after that hackathon for this project. And so that's the easiest way to get in, and there's a whole host of developer resources and how to get in touch with people that come along with the hackathons. But nothing really beats the in-person stuff. We run these hacker houses around the world every year, and I would say that if people are at least tangentially interested in getting into the Solana ecosystem, attend one of those hacker houses or attend Breakpoint, because it's the best place to meet people in the community, and that really just sends you on your way on building on top of Solana. And we are always open as well. There are easy ways to get in touch with us. We're all on Telegram constantly. I feel like the whole organization is terminally online. And then every one of my colleagues runs similar group chats for the people who are building applications in a certain vertical. So for me, I run a group chat where I've got all of the DeFi founders within the Solana ecosystem. So they can talk to the Solana Foundation, they can talk to each other. It's a place where everyone can share information and connect with each other. So it creates a starting ground for building composable integrations or building partnerships or whatever you might need. And so it's a very cohesive, open organization. So I'd recommend that if anyone's interested, please either apply to one of those hackathons or show up to one of the in-person events. There's going to be a lot more in the United States this year too, but all over the world.
That's great. And I would love to, you touched on DeFi in Solana. What are some of the bigger platforms on the Solana ecosystem? Obviously, I imagine there's a good amount of lending going on the network, as well as things like, providing liquidity for liquidity pools, yield farming. So would love to understand, I guess, not just what are some of the bigger platforms, but how does the DeFi on Solana differ from what exists in the EVM world built on Ethereum and some of those L2s?
So the DeFi ecosystem is functionally similar from a primitives perspective. You've got the lending pools, you've got the aggregators, you've got the AMMs. There are some differences with DeFi, there are central limit order books within the Solana ecosystem because the infrastructure supports that. It's infeasible to build central limit order books on Ethereum because to be putting orders on an order book and pulling them off for a market maker would incur so much in transaction fees that it's infeasible to build an order book in that fashion. And so there are downstream effects of the infrastructure of Solana that make it different from the DeFi infrastructure on Ethereum. Another one, for example, is the Jupiter aggregator. So the Jupiter aggregator on Solana is able to do 10 to 20 hops to make sure that you are getting best order execution. And in order to facilitate that on something like Ethereum L1, you would incur so much in transaction costs that it's impossible to build something like that. And so you end up getting a better user experience because you're able to pull from 10 to 12 different liquidity sources in order to get best execution for a trade. Whereas you wouldn't be able to create a similar experience on other blockchains. And so we have, to summarize, we have all of the same infrastructure that you would need in a DeFi ecosystem. There are just some nuances on how they're structured on Solana as compared to elsewhere.
Yeah, super interesting. So if we could even step back and like zoom out, I'm trying to, I want everyone to understand kind of the greater Solana ecosystem, just like there's a, greater Ethereum ecosystem. If we could kind of divide it by, sectors, right? I mean, you have the foundation, which essentially kind of starts a lot of the thoughts and the objectives in the community. But like you said, the ecosystem has absolutely grown into its own and leading its own, right? Maybe some of the bigger payment, goals and missions are at the top, right? Then we have kind of the DeFi sector, like we just spoke about. We have a lot of shenanigans with the meme coins and the AI, which we can get into as well. Do you guys have any sort of like a real world asset or securitization space? And also, is there any maybe like supply chain kind of tech or any other kind of bigger sectors that we're missing aside from those kind of first few?
Yeah, so I'll just run through the different verticals that we have for focuses at the Solana Foundation. So
Please.
we have the DeFi vertical, which is my primary focus. We have payments. We have institutional. So institutional is typically like working with banks or large asset managers or people who are building something of that sort on chain or off chain. A lot of the highly regulated institutions want their own private instance. So we have what we refer to as SPEs or Solana permissioned environments. If people want to do like a pilot test case, if you're a large bank or a highly regulated institution, you want to come and try out the Solana tech, but you don't want to launch on mainnet, you can come and work with us and we'll help coax you through launching an SPE. So DeFi, payments, institutional. Then we have NFTs and consumer applications, games, AI, DPIN, and then I'll go back to DeFi because I will include RWAs within DeFi because that's one of like the focuses of mine. And so we do have a pretty strong, while small, strong RWA ecosystem. And so there are companies like Baxis who I've actually written a long blog post about. Baxis is tokenizing high-end whiskey on Solana. And so the way that this market works today is there are collectors' whiskeys worth tens of thousands of dollars all over the world. And the way in which the market works for that is you take your whiskey to like a Christie's auction or a Sotheby's auction, and you have a hyper localized liquidity market for that because it's only the investors there that are there that day. You have all this risk associated with bringing your bottle to the market. And so what Baxis does is they tokenize the bottle, they accept it into their vault. The vault is tracked for temperature and pressure conditions, so you always know the value and the condition of the underlying. And then they facilitate an online market for those bottles of whiskey. So anyone all over the world can purchase that NFT that represents the bottle. And once they receive it, if they want the physical bottle, they can burn it, and Baxis will ship the bottle to them wherever they are located in the world. So what Baxis does is they create a hyper liquid market for what is currently a fragmented local market for these high-end whiskeys. And this is like a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so they are just getting started, but they've got millions of dollars of whiskey on their platform. And the marketplace is just the beginning of what you can do with a product like that, because there's credit opportunities that are unlocked if you can tokenize these things where you might not have been able to do it otherwise. So if you integrate this with a DeFi protocol and you use your NFT that is collateralizing a $10,000 bottle of whiskey, but you don't want to sell that bottle of whiskey, you can get 80% loan to value against that thing and then go use that money to generate yield or go pay your rent or whatever it might be. And so the blockchain is really the mechanism that is unlocking these capital assets. And so Baxis is just like the canary in the coal mine for what you can do with these kinds of assets. And so I'm really excited to see what happens in the RWA space over the next couple of years.
I appreciate you bringing up the fact that you would intertwine RWAs and DeFi. When RWAs really started, and Mark and I really got into RWAs around 2019, and we've done a lot in the space since. What you said about Baxis really excites me because everyone assumed that when RWAs were created, there would be these highly liquid trading markets that would just appear where people could trade private assets, and that is not going to be the case for a long time. Private assets, there's disclosure requirements, and most people don't want to make those disclosures in order to get them trading. So the next best thing is obviously to apply it to the most popular crypto use case right now, which is borrowing and lending. And if you can borrow against an asset, go out and try and yield it in other areas. That's one of the most effective and best use cases of crypto. So I really appreciate that you just said that, and I'm gonna have to look into Baxis and some of the other RWAs that you guys are doing.
Yeah, check out my blog post on Baxis. It should be on my Twitter, and I can share with you guys as well. It basically goes into I don't know if you guys have ever read this book, but it's called The Mystery of Capital. The whole idea of human prosperity over the last 200 years has been rooted in credit. And so if you can unlock assets that are going to flush the market with liquidity, it can only result in human prosperity and better lives for people all over the world. And so a lot of the examples that like he pulls on in the book is, we had all of these assets through, the systems of government that we have here in the Western world. You have trust in the government who has good property registers, and therefore allows you to get credit against these assets like a car or a home. And so the blockchain kind of serves as this like meta entity that can serve as this record keeping thing for all of these long tail assets. Like you think about like collectibles or things like whiskey that other than sitting in my closet, they're doing nothing. And if I can tokenize them on a blockchain and unlock capital against them, the benefits for people all over the globe are going to be monumental. So I wrote a really extensive blog post on Baxis and just credit assets, and so definitely check it out.
I will definitely read that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. We do for whatever reason, I feel like the AB network has built up a big RWA like fan base, which is typically like the older crowd, but they're interested in this stuff. I mean, obviously it's the older crowd that is, at least for now has most of the capital in the world, but there's a big shift happening, which I think brings us well into some of our next topics. Let's talk about some of the fun stuff. So, we got memes. I want to know your favorite NFTs on Sol. We want to know the memes that are popping off. But I think before we dive into all of that chaos and madness, I think maybe kind of a halfway transition would be to talk about some of the AI and the agent stuff going on. So we are very tapped into obviously the Ethereum ecosystem. We're very big on the base L2 and kind of the optimism ecosystem as well. Some of the bigger and best scaling solutions that are on Ethereum. Those have evolved into being their own kind of big, beautiful ecosystems, a lot led by Coinbase and, the OP DAO. A lot of big capital and, large amounts of devs behind that. One of the biggest projects on Base right now is Virtual, which is Virtual Protocol. They're popping off. They're basically an AI agent platform, makes it easy or, relatively easy for anyone to go on and create their own AI agent. Which is, has a wide variety of implications. We've talked about it on a couple of UEV episodes by now, but I mean, if you could almost think of, what if you could program your own NPC, whether that be in a video game or, Clippy, like from Microsoft, who can follow you around and stalk your life or have, a lot of different aspects to them. What's going on in the AI kind of space in Solana? Are there any leading like AI development protocols that you've seen or that you want to shout out, or is it still pretty decentralized and everyone is just kind of it's a fight to kind of be a leader in the AI space on Sol, or kind of what's the status of the AI ecosystem there?
Yeah, it's super early. I would say that there's no clear leader or trend yet. I think it's very much like people toying around with what you can do with the crossover between a blockchain and an AI agent. I would say that there's like two distinctions of like things that we are focusing on from a foundation perspective is the agentic finance, so like the AI agents owning a wallet and doing some sort of activity with that, and what can transpire with a autonomous agent controlling its own bank account essentially. And then on the other side, there are projects like Noose Research on Solana that are doing like decentralized inference and training through blockchains. And so these are like totally different aspects of AI and crypto, but super interesting applications of both. So one of them is like very application focused. It's like what is going to happen with this AI agent and what immediate impact can this thing make? And then the other aspect of AI on Solana is like how can we utilize the properties of a blockchain to better train data around the world in an efficient manner to make these agents better, stronger, more efficient, and just like overall more comprehensive. And when the way in which you train agents today is you've got a bunch of GPUs wired into each other and all sharing data on like an instantaneous basis. Whereas like people like Noose are trying to figure out, okay, there's data across the world that we would really love for this training, but it's inefficient for a GPU over here to chat with a GPU across the world, and it's impossible from a training perspective. So they're trying to figure out how can we use a blockchain in order to better facilitate information transfer and training with data that is global rather than hyper local. And so those are the two areas that at least I've seen, but it is super early days when how we see the applications of these things turning out. So a lot more to come over the next couple of years for sure.
Got it. I think that's a very helpful way to break it down. And nice to understand that it's early. I think we're starting to see some clear winners on base, but it's interesting to see on Solana kind of the stage that may be at. And you called it, did you call it agentic finance?
Agentic
That is
finance, yeah.
that is super. I mean, it's a brand new concept. It's like it's madness. I think I'm a little bit more interested in that one, being a trader myself, seeing watching these bots out trade me and put me out of a job. But it's gonna be it's very interesting just to see this stuff develop. It's like we're at the edge of the internet. I say, as researchers, that's where we try to stay is at the edge of the internet, and it's like we're here and now we're just watching wild experiments unfold. Which I think also, kind of leads into the memes, right? How has how is the foundation being the responsible, maybe like big brother to the industry? How have you guys just reacted to so much chaos in the meme ecosystem? I mean, there's a lot of different things that we could talk about here, but like what's kind of been the reaction of the foundation just watching Solana kind of become the home to all of this madness?
It's been really wild to see, to be honest. And this is a perfect example of one of those things that is just like emergent of like a mature ecosystem. It was just like all of a sudden one day there was just like incessant meme coins, and I was like, where did all of these projects come from? Like where are these people coming from? Who's trading these things? And then it spawned a whole sub ecosystem around this. You've got things like Pump.fun and Wasabi and all of these places where you can trade meme coins, and like people are trying to figure out how to bootstrap liquidity for meme coins and make them safer to trade so that people don't get rugged. And so like there's all these emergent aspects of meme coin trading that emerges after you see like that. Like it all started really back in like 2023 with like Bonk, and then from there it's just like that meme of like the guy flicking over the domino, and then it just like knocks down some huge domino way in the distance. It's like it's that tiny domino was Bonk, and now we're at like Pump.fun, and people are launching hundreds of thousands of meme coins a day. And so it's super hard to see like where any of this is going, and it's really just like we've been along for the ride as much as the rest of the ecosystem has.
Yeah, I think that's super awesome. I think there's a couple sides of it. I mean, Beckman, did you want to say something?
Well, I was just gonna say I really like how responsible you were with your answer earlier in the podcast, Ben, because you said something like, "With the memes, we're monitoring it, not necessarily putting resources behind it, not necessarily taking resources away from it, but it's something that you guys are very much aware of." And obviously, I mean, it's been one of the stories of the year. It's 2024 was one of the most popular things in crypto was meme coins, and where do you trade them? You trade them on Solana. It was really interesting. A lot of people have done very well. It is, there is a casino aspect of it, but that's crypto. And I think one of the exciting things about crypto is being able to provide financial tools to anybody in the entire world. If somebody thinks that this is the first time in history where somebody can literally make money, or have financial stake in something that they find funny or something that they find relatable. So it is
Totally.
it is a turning point for what we're doing, and obviously your thoughts mean a lot on what this is. You're the first person we've spoken to that's in the in the trenches in a different way, not as a trader, but as someone who's part of a foundation that is monitoring this and tied to it.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to like the ethos of blockchains is that like the whole point is that you can't tell people what to do with their money and what they do with their time and energy. And so, like, it's not for us, it's not for regulators, it's not for other people to dictate what people do with their money. If they want to buy a dog meme coin, they can buy a dog meme coin. I think that the difference is like, I think it'll mature over time. Like obviously we like it does get a little bit lawless sometimes. Like everyone saw like what happened with like the Hawk Tua meme coin recently. Is like you can't have that. You can't have systems where like someone goes and launches a meme coin and they immediately rug $1 million from a bunch of retail participants. Like that is like totally out of bounds. But if there is like a fair launched meme coin and like people want to acquire it because they think it's funny and it ends up going up 100x, like more power to you. Like no, it shouldn't be anybody's job to say that you can or cannot acquire that thing if you want to.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think on one side of it, it's beautiful the amount of innovation that's happening, that's essentially allowing people to create these new, financial instruments, right? That are empowering communities, empowering trading, empowering artists, right? In all different kinds of ways. And I think that is that, you guys should be really proud of yourselves for, the Solana Foundation and the whole ecosystem should be proud of enabling that kind of landscape to allow for innovation. I think there's also, the other side of it as the foundation may be seen as, kind of a more responsible entity in the ecosystem, right? I wouldn't want that job. Like, I'm definitely very pro do whatever the hell you want, right? It's like, only invest what you're willing to risk, right? It's like, be very aware of the risks that you're taking when you're participating in these ecosystems. But I think also, you guys must be aware that on at some point it does start to affect the reputation of the ecosystem, right? Like when you have I mean, I have friends that are sending me like hilarious things like some guy that was going to kill a fish if the coin didn't get to like 50 mil market cap, or like dudes locking themselves in cages waiting for the market cap to pump. It's like, okay, look, it's all good fun and stuff, and honestly I think it's hilarious, but like I don't know, is there some, do you guys have a reaction at the foundation of like how to kind of guide the ecosystem to not do that as much, or and move, I guess, more away from the short-term scammy stuff and try to be more focused on longevity?
Yeah, I think that there are self-regulating properties to blockchains. Like for example, like you had mentioned, I presume what you were referring to was like the Pump.fun live streams.
Correct.
Like that was the foundation didn't have an opinion one way or another, but everybody on Twitter did. And they all saw the opinions of people on Twitter and then they took the live streams down. And so like that's a perfect example of like when people overstep, like the rest of the ecosystem is like, yo, like, we need to figure this out before you like go back to this, or like this is
Before
way over
somebody
the
kills a
line.
fish.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so Again, I mean, it goes to like the nature of permissionless blockchains, where it's a group regulation. It's basically like a DAO on Twitter that everyone is, regulating each other. And so I don't think that this is the meme coin emergence is much different than you guys were all around in DeFi summer when everyone was launching food coins. I think that like it's just a rehash of the food coins, and it's kind of hilarious to see some of like the long stay like ETH maxis like dunking on meme coins when everyone was trading yams and all this other stuff back in 2020. It's like it's no different. It's a permissionless blockchain ecosystem, and people are going to do what they want to do. And so I think that everyone's going to like self weed out the scams over time, and hopefully we actually get some real regulation that puts some bounds around this industry and tells people what you really can do legally and what you can't do legally in building a crypto business in the United States. And so I'm excited for that. But I think more power to the people who want to push the boundaries and try out some cool stuff.
That's awesome. I have one last question for me on the memes and NFTs. So, of course, none of this is financial advice. This is an educational podcast. But as far as the communities, right? We won't talk about the assets, but we'll talk about the communities behind these assets. Are there any communities, either meme communities or NFT communities, that you think are really setting themselves apart on Solana, that are just like, clearly there is something very special going on with this meme community or this NFT community? Could any that you really think are different, special?
Not particularly. If I'm being completely honest, I'm not a meme coiner myself. I own a couple NFTs just as like trophies. Like I own some Solana Monkey Business NFTs and some DGen Apes, like the OG NFTs in the Solana ecosystem, more as like a nostalgic remembrance of the prior bull market.
Hmm.
But no, I mean I'm really, if I'm being honest, I'm really focused on what this blockchain tech can do for society and for business. And so that's where I spend the majority of my time.
That's awesome. Professional answer, as we expected.
That was great. I wanted to move topics really quickly. One of the big things around Solana and one of the, I guess, arguments against Solana has been around centralization and how expensive it is to run a node or participate as a validator of the network. I would love to hear kind of what's your take on that. I guess how would you dispute that to those who are saying that, and kind of where does the future lie in terms of centralization on the network?
Yeah, so, well, first, I would say that I think that the narrative of centralization is like a bit overblown. Like, typically the people who are puppeting the centralization narrative are the people who are like not looking at the facts that are underlying that. And so, uh, everyone's got a different definition of decentralization. And so, like, one of the things that everybody looks at is, I think, is Nakamoto coefficient, like the minimum amount of nodes required if they were all colluding together to corrupt the blockchain or process invalid blocks. And so I believe the Nakamoto coefficient for Solana right now is in the ballpark of like 19 or 20 globally distributed nodes that would need to collude together. And so I think that centralization is, there's a range, and I think that the thing that's most important is that minimum viable decentralization be reached. And so you want to make it to the point where like no one can like reach into your wallet and take your money, but at the same time, like I don't think that you need everybody in the world running a node on their phone, because I think that that's inefficient from a information propagation standpoint. There's probably a point of diminishing returns where you have too much decentralization. And so I think that Solana is sufficiently decentralized as it stands, but I do think that there's room for improvement over time, because you're going to want a super robust network. And I think that we should probably get that Nakamoto coefficient somewhere in the ballpark of like 50 to 100 nodes. Um, and that kind of leans into the cost conversation. And so it is definitely expensive to run a Solana validator. I believe that the average monthly cost is somewhere in the ballpark of like $500 to $1,000 to run the hardware infrastructure, and then you have to get stake on top of that in order to make sure that you have like break even. And I believe the break even stake is somewhere in the ballpark of like 1,000 to 2,000 Sol. And so specifically on the hardware costs, I think that the thing that people fail to understand is that, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, the more hardware that you throw at the system, the more efficient it gets. And the whole idea is that hardware just gets better and better, like to the second power every 2 years with Moore's law. And so if you've got hardware today that can operate on the Solana blockchain and process transactions, that same hardware 10 years into the future will be obsolete for everything else, but will still be able to run the Solana blockchain. And so the important factor there is that if you've got obsolete hardware that can be acquired for pennies of what it costs today, the costs of running a Solana validator go down over time. And so while you can put your best hardware at it, it's not like you're going to process more blocks. It's totally dependent on how much stake you have. And so like as hardware gets cheaper and cheaper, more people will be able to participate in the network and vie for stake on the network, which should improve decentralization and should lower the cost of running a validator. And so to summarize, it is expensive today, totally understand, and it's hard to get stake. That's why we have systems in place that are short-term systems like the Solana Foundation delegation program, where we will delegate stake to new validators to help them hit that break even until they get to the point where they can use cheaper hardware to run their validator software so that it gets better over time.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I think before we wrap it up with our last question about what excites you most about the future of Solana, I want to know, is there any projects in the crypto space outside of the Solana ecosystem and outside of Bitcoin, because that's too easy of an answer, but anything outside of Solana and Bitcoin in crypto that excites you, like project specific?
Yeah, so I'll go back to my DeFi roots. I really love the Pendle application, like separating the principal from the yield of a DeFi position or from stake. And so if we were talking 2 months ago, I would have been like, I would love for this project to come onto Solana. Now I know that there are projects working on it on Solana. There are a couple, Exponential Finance and Pi-Fi.
Where did Pendle originate?
Pendle originated on Ethereum. And then it's the primary lending protocol that Athena uses in order to split the basis yield from the principal stake. And so I'm really excited about Exponential and Pi coming to the Solana ecosystem. Exponential is focusing specifically on DeFi. So like say, for example, you deposit $1,000 into a lending pool, you can separate the principal from the yield, whereby you can sell forward yield to somebody else. So the example would be like if you're hedging the yield, you think the rates are going to go down. The rates are currently at 10%. You think they're going to go to 5%. You can sell that forward yield to somebody who's willing to buy it at that 10% yield, but they take the variable and you take the fixed. I think that helps a ton from hedging for both, not just for traders in the ecosystem, but for individuals who are hedging their own DeFi positions or their stake. So I'm really excited to see a couple of those come to market on Solana.
Yeah, that was super simple stuff, very, very easy to understand. I think we'll play that back in slow motion and get some alpha from it. But no, that's awesome. So I guess lastly, Beckman, you wanna give him the last big question about the future?
Yeah, and I think, Ben, we just wanted to say, how impressed we are with you and Solana and everything that you've been building in the past few years. We've known you for a while. I met you back in college. Mark, I don't know when you met him, but I imagine it was around the same time. So it's really great when you have people in your network that have grown and become these top figures in some of the top positions and networks in the ecosystem. And, just really great to have a friend of the program like you. But yeah, I think what we really want to know is, what is that top thing that excites you in 2025 about Solana?
Man, that's a tough question. I think that a lot has changed in the last few months. I think that I'm really excited for the next year because it feels like the barriers to allowing other people into the ecosystem are about to come down. And so that's not just like deregulation, it's just like clear boundaries on what people are going to be able to do with blockchains. And so all the people that I've been talking to over the last 4 years that are like, we'd love to do this, but we're just waiting for some clear regulatory boundaries. I'm just excited for that influx of people to finally come and start building on top of Solana. I think that we're going to get so much experimentation in the next year with not just with finance, but with all of the things that we had talked about today, like agentic finance or just general applications of AI agents with blockchains. And so I'm super excited for what's going to happen in the next 12 months with those people who are finally able to dip their toes.
Yeah, I think it also goes beyond regulation too. It's the space is finally primed with better UX than ever, better UI than ever, and just more, I guess, legitimate people. You have some of the biggest institutions in the world that are opening their doors to crypto. There are some of the biggest institutions in the world that are building applications on top of crypto. I know Mark and I are super excited. There's so much that's going to happen in 2025. Improved regulation is just going to be the
Yeah,
straw that broke the camel's back. So
It's
unbelievable.
totally.
coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. The big money's coming. Bitcoin, Ben, thank you for your time, brother.
Yes,
This has
real
been
quick, Ben, anything that you wanted to plug, anywhere people can find information about you, Solana, anything would this would be the time to do it.
Yeah, for sure. On Solana, just check out solana.org, solana.org/grants. If you're looking at grants, check out the events page as well. There's a ton of in-person events that are coming this year. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Benny Bitcoins.
right on. All right. Thank you guys. We will see you next time.